What is going on, kings and queens of this wonderful wonderland that we call YouTube? We are here with the first official video of the newly named King Jabberwocky Games. And you know what? I figured what better way to celebrate than to keep up with the tradition of telling you my top 5 games of the year. Now with that being said, I am fully aware that we have left 2017 behind us for a while now, and we are well underway into the new year here in 2018. But that doesn't change the fact that the camera's rolling, I have my list, so let's just skip all the explanations and the pleasantries and get into it. Now, naturally, or at least semi-naturally, I felt it only right to kick off this list with a bit of an unpopular opinion. And that unpopular opinion is Yooka-Laylee. Now, if you don't really know why I consider Yooka-Laylee to be an unpopular opinion, it's because while the game started off with a lot of hype and a lot of love and support, by the time that the community got their hands on it and spent some time with it, it turned on this game horribly. So instead of it ending up on the best games of 2017 list, like I believe it needs to be, it ended up on quite the opposite for a lot of people as one of the worst games of the year. So, if you haven't heard of Yooka-Laylee for whatever reason, if you've had any childhood at all, you've definitely heard of games like Donkey Kong 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and of course, Banjo-Kazooie, along with many others. And what is the major thing that all those games have in common? That's right, their developer. We all remember the magic of Rareware and its ability to create games that have lasted years in the memories of kids that grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s. And Yooka-Laylee was created with that in mind. You know, the developer really wanted to create something that continued that magic and recaptured that magic so that people that grew up back then that are now adults can reminisce and have a dose of nostalgia while the next generation can experience what made games back then so great. What made Rare games specifically so great. And you know, all things considered, I think they did a pretty good job. I think I've mentioned this a time or two before, but if there's two things in the video game world that my girlfriend loves immensely, it is Mario and Banjo-Kazooie. So naturally, when this game came out and it was brought to my attention, I had to run out and buy it and let her take the reins on it. And even though we haven't beaten the game as of the time that this video is recorded, she's currently working on 100%ing it, so we haven't beaten it all the way through yet. But I think the general consensus of the game is, much like my own personal opinion, is it's a pretty decent game. As far as the community goes and the general opinion, the main reason why it failed in the eyes of a lot of other people is that it wasn't Banjo-Kazooie. It wasn't Conker's Bad Fur Day. It wasn't the games themselves that we grew up with. And for whatever reason, they refused to accept that. But let's be honest, the majority of the time, the video game community and the gaming community in general, as far as critics go, are extremely fickle and kind of BS if you ask me. But you know what? I completely disagree. I think the developers accomplished exactly what they set out to do. They set out to have Yooka-Laylee be a spiritual successor to rare games that we remember. And I think it did that very, very well. From everything down to the platforming, to the collectathon elements, to the characters and the environment, it all screamed Rare. It all reminded me of exactly playing games like Banjo-Kazooie. And it did it without being those games. That being said, it's not a perfect game. You know, people that have played this game know exactly what I mean when I tell you that the two major flaws of this game are Rextro and Cardos. If you don't know who I'm talking about, look it up. But other than that, I think it was a very masterfully done game. It accomplished what it was meant to. And if you're somebody that's watching this that has had interest in Yooka-Laylee, but either you haven't gotten it yet, or you've kind of been turned off because of what the critics and other gamers in the community have said, let me just share this little piece of advice with you. Don't expect this game to be like the ones you remember. The fact is that Rare and its magic and kind of our childhoods in that regard are gone. And the only thing that we have left to hang on to is this spiritual successor, this small flame in the darkness. So don't go into it thinking that it's going to be a perfect representation of Banjo or Conker or Donkey Kong or whatever else you may have played. Because the reality is that it's a different time, it's a different era, it's a different game. It's an entirely its own beast, it's its own thought process, it's its own creative project that essentially sets out to do nothing more than to remind us about the games that used to be and to kind of give us hope that maybe in the future we'll have more games like it. But the reality is, Rare is gone, we'll never get it back, and this is the closest thing that we'll ever have. And we just need to accept that and enjoy it for what the game is, and not what it could be or what it was supposed to be. So that's why it's number 4. Number 5, I'm sorry. Number 4, I don't think will be much of a surprise to anybody. Representing the Switch is Mario Odyssey. Now, as I said with Yooka-Laylee, my girlfriend loves Mario 64, so naturally when we pre-ordered it, I said, you're playing it and I'm gonna watch. And let me just tell you, it is just shy of being a perfect game. As somebody, as two people that grew up falling in love with Super Mario 64, it was an amazing game to play. Because within the first maybe 10 or 15 minutes of picking up a controller and loading it up, it honestly felt like we were playing that game. It honestly felt like we were kids again. And it was just this beautiful, harmonious mix-up of nostalgia and new ideas, new gameplay concepts, new enemies, new worlds. It was all new, wrapped up in a nostalgic package, and it was awesome. Everything from the ability to have Mario throw his hat and become whatever enemy it lands on. How many of us Mario fans out there wanted to be a Goomba or a Koopa or a Bowser? Well, you can do that in this game, and it's absolutely incredible. And I can't recommend it enough for any Mario fan out there. If you have a Switch, go get one. Go get it. And if you don't have a Switch, definitely buy it and play this game, because it is probably one of the best Mario experiences I have had in a long time, and I haven't even played it myself. With that being said, the reason why, it's number 4 is because it's not a perfect game. No games are perfect. And the reason why it's not higher up on this list is because there is one glaring issue that I have with the game. And I'm going to try and explain it without spoiling too much, because I definitely recommend it and want you guys to go experience it yourselves, along with all of these games on this list. But when the game ends, you get your typical, ending cutscene and your credits. After you beat the base game. Now, there are 2 things that you can do when the game is over. It's a perfect opportunity for you completionists out there to go ahead and collect all the stars, or I guess they're moon pieces in this game, that you missed, and really search every nook and cranny for every last completion criteria that you may or may not have. The other thing that you can do is, after you beat the game and the credits are finished, it unlocks some secret levels. Now, the issue that I have with these secret levels isn't a major one. We did this secret, we completed the base game, we completed the secret levels. My girlfriend spent hours upon hours upon hours, frustrating hours, completing this, and we finally did. And like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, but essentially one of the last levels is, they're challenging. One of the last levels that you do is you have a boss rush of every major boss in the game. You have 1 life to run through them all back to back, and that's one of the last levels. And like I said, it's supposed to be challenging, it's supposed to be frustrating, and it will be. The thing is, though, the way that the game ends after that is a little bit of a problem for me, because literally nothing happens. The game just continues. So instead of there being, I don't know, this dramatic cutscene or this dramatic ending to the game, or maybe some final credits to be like, okay, now you beat the game, it's just over. I think you might unlock some sort of costume for doing it, but essentially you don't really gain too much. And aside from maybe the bragging rights of saying, hey, we beat the game, we beat the levels, and, being able to put that on your metaphorical gaming resume, is there really a point to going through these challenges and accomplishing them? Not really. But that's just me. I felt extremely disappointed in the way that they handled the extra levels and kind of the ending of the game. And I just wish they handled it a little bit differently. Like I said, maybe an extra cutscene, maybe an extra round of credits to say, hey, you really for real beat the game this time. Thanks for playing, yada yada yada. And it just wasn't there, which I thought was kind of weird and underwhelming. But that's just me. All in all, though, I do highly recommend, as I said, playing this game. Whether you're a Mario fan or not, whether you own a Switch or not, definitely play this game. Number 3, the middle of the pack, is a little game called Little Nightmares. And this is a game that runs along the same vein as games like Limbo and Inside, where it's a kind of a room-to-room type puzzle game. And in games like these, the narrative really isn't the strong point. I'm not going to say too much about the game here because I do have a full-on review coming of the game where I get into kind of the nitty-gritty details. But the narrative is kind of second to the overall situation. And I just have to say that the game is called Little Nightmares for a good reason. Because I wouldn't expect a puzzle indie game like this to be genuinely scary, and it was. And I think the contributing factor of this is just the way that the game is presented. With the world that you're in, the camera work of the game, it all kind of combines to create a pretty bone-chilling experience. Because the game does a very, very good job of making you genuinely feel like the small child you play as, who is very, very small in comparison to the rest of the things around her, who is thrown into this hostile environment that has to find her way out. Everything is bigger than you, everything is out to get you, and you are relatively helpless, all things considered. Pretty much the only way that you can get around the majority of the enemies is by either flat out running away from them or outsmarting them. You can't defend yourself, really. There's nothing you can do except get away from the situation at hand, which makes you truly helpless, makes you feel truly small. And like I said, everything in this game is overly huge, including the enemies. They're just these huge, gangly, ugly people, and it does a very, very good job of throwing you into a situation, making the situation feel really, really genuine, and creating this uneasy feeling for the characters. And to be honest with you, this game has showed me that I have some fears that I didn't know I had. Specifically, one of the DLC chapters that I will talk about in depth more in my review deals with water. The entire level deals with staying out of the water. Now, this is a fear that I've heard many people talk about. They have a fear of the idea of not being able to see what is waiting in the water, and they have a fear of having something reach up and grab you and pull you under the water in a situation that is completely beyond your control. And wouldn't you know it, that is exactly what happens in this level. There is an enemy that swims around. She's a big, gangly old lady, and if you get her attention, if you spend too much time in the water, all you see is this giant, ugly hand reach up, grab you, and pull you under the water. And it's a truly terrifying Jaws-like experience because the music changes, the adrenaline of the gets going, and you just know that she's coming for you. You don't know where, you don't know exactly when. She's just gonna reach up and grab you, and I had so much anxiety playing this game, and I think that's why it was so fun. Is because I know I'm a chicken in a lot of ways, and I don't hide that. I don't lie and say nothing startles me. Um, but there is a difference between being startled and being genuinely afraid. And there was a couple of times in this game, just because of the situation that you're in, just because of the way the world presents itself to the main character, in the position that you, the player, are in, where I was generally afraid to see what was around the next corner. I was afraid to go into the next room, the next dark, pitch black room, because I knew something not great was going to be waiting for me. And it's one of those games where the majority of the time you might be able to hear things before you see them, or you might be able to see shadows, and the game basically forces you to challenge them head on. So, yeah, it's they're not kidding when they say that it's a horror game, because quite honestly, at least to me, it was very, very scary, and I think that's why I loved it so much, is that it genuinely made me fearful and anxiety ridden. But yeah, if you're interested in hearing more about the plot and the story and more things about it, definitely keep an eye out for the review. Hopefully that'll be the next video that comes out. But yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that. Other than that, I definitely recommend that you play it yourself. So number 3 is Little Nightmares. Now, for the next two, number 2 and number 1, I can only say so much about them, especially number 2, for different reasons. But number 2 is mostly because I have only played maybe 2 or 3 hours of it before I got busy and was just never able to pick it up again. And I know that might make me sound like a hypocrite or whatever. And you might be asking yourself, if you've only played 2 or 3 hours of it, how is it on number 2 on your best games list? And the best way that I can answer it is that the 2 or 3 hours that I spent in the game were absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. And that's because number 2 on this list is Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, like I said, I haven't played too much of the game, can't say too much about the game. I am planning on playing the game all the way through, again, hopefully soon, sometime. But the best way I can describe the game, and I'm sure somebody that has played the game is probably going to correct me or say this isn't right, but the best way that I could describe it is if you took something like Far Cry Primal and took out all the animals, the mammoths, the saber-toothed tigers, I don't know. If you took out the dinosaurs and the animals in that game and you replaced them with robot versions of themselves. That's right. ladies and gentlemen, robots. It is a game all about fighting and harvesting and surviving in a world filled with robot dinosaurs, robot raptor-esque things, robot saber-toothed tigers, which sucks, by the way, all the way up to robot brontosaurus type things, or as my Land Before Time loving self, even at the age of almost 24 now, I caught myself referring to them as long necks. And really, what more do you need than that? What is more badass in a game scenario than robot animals that you have to hunt and kill and harvest? The idea of the plot, I don't know too much about it. I don't remember too much about it. Essentially, from what I remember, or what I think I remember, it deals with the whole idea of at some point in the distant future, there is some sort of mass extinction, and essentially humanity starts over, and they're more primal, kind of like a indigenous tribe. You know, they hunt with spears and they hunt with bow and arrows, and they're essentially afraid of technology. So they have to coexist with this future, this utopia, apocalyptic utopia of robot animals. And it's just really, really cool. And it's a beautiful game. It's a badass game. And I'm so looking forward to getting back to it. This is one of those games where I got busy. I played it, enjoyed it, got busy, set it down, and I said I definitely have to come back. And I keep looking at the game on my shelf, and I keep saying someday soon, someday. And that's why Horizon Zero Dawn is number 2 on this list. So we did it. We've made it to number 1, the best game of 2017 for me. But before we get into it, let's just do a quick recap of the other contenders in this list. Number 5, Yooka-Laylee. Number 4, Mario Odyssey. Number 3, Little Nightmares. Number 2, Horizon Zero Dawn. And without further ado, number 1, don't think it's going to be a surprise to anybody, is Cuphead. Now, the reason why I can only talk so much about this game is because I'm embarrassed of Cuphead. Cuphead embarrasses me not because of the game itself, but because of my ability to play the game. I can't. The game is hard. The game possesses a certain ability that I do not possess. And some might call it an excuse. Some might find this validated. But I think the reason why I can't play the game, I have tried. I think I've completed one level. I don't even think I've beaten a boss yet. But I think the best excuse that I can come up with is I didn't grow up playing a lot of Super Nintendo-esque games like Contra or other platforming run and gun type games, which is basically all Cuphead is. So I really have no experience with a game like this the way that other people who have played those old school run and gun type games, I don't have the experience that they might possess. With that being said, I have seen countless YouTubers play it. I've tried to play it myself. And yeah. So the this might be a little bit hypocritical, but the reason that Cuphead is my game of the year has nothing to do with my personal experience with the game. It has to do with everything the game is. And if you don't know, some of you probably don't know what Cuphead is and think that's a really, really weird name for a game. And the reason why I love this game so much is because it is done in the style of a 1920, I think, style cartoon, which coincidentally I loved growing up. I watched everything from Betty Boop to Popeye to Bugs Bunny, all the cartoons that you would probably watch with your grandparents. I watched, and I grew up on it. So to have a game that is, it's all hand drawn, it's all painted in the style of a cartoon, to have a video game centered around a subject that I really, really love and have personal experience with is really, really awesome. And, to be quite honest, as much as I would love to have the ability to play this myself, which I'm sure I will someday, I'm going to practice really, really hard and get there. But right now, I just love watching other people play it. I love the experience of Cuphead. And just diving in and watching other people fight the bosses and playing it. So I am perfectly okay in a lot of ways not having the ability to play the game myself. But it is just a really, really awesome game. Everything about it, from the animations to the characters themselves, the bosses themselves, to the soundtrack. I have the entire Cuphead soundtrack on my Spotify account. I love everything about this game. I only wish that I had been savvy and capable enough to come up with this game myself. As a creator, I say that as a creator, as a writer, and as somebody that has always wanted to make video games, I wish that Cuphead was mine. That's how great it is. And if you're somebody that loves the old school cartoons, loves that type of art style, and loves a challenge, loves the challenge of old school type games, all I can say is play it for yourself. And like I said, I can only say so much because I haven't experienced the difficulty myself, apart from not being able to do it. I've only watched people, but it was still worthy to me of being my number one on this list. And I can't stress enough, whether or not you grew up watching these cartoons, whether or not you grew up playing these run and gun games, just play it yourself. It's worth every penny that you are going to spend on it. And it is like an experience unlike any other gaming experience that I personally have had. And I have played a lot of video games through the years. And this one is just like a benchmark for me in the modern era. So yeah, I can't stress enough that whether you play it yourself, whether you look it up and watch it, just check the game Cuphead out. So that'll about do it, guys. I'll do a quick recap again now that we're all the way done through the list of my top 5 games of 2017. We'll start with number 5, which was Yooka-Laylee. Number 4 was Super Mario Odyssey. Number 3 was Little Nightmares. 2 was Horizon Zero Dawn. And my number 1 game of 2017 was, of course, Cuphead. And in closing, I just want to say that from a creative standpoint, with my books and everything, I've really tried to extend my social media presence so that everybody is able to see, my YouTube videos and things that I'm doing with my books and everything. So I've really tried to grow my social media presence so that everybody has a chance to see it. And if you will look up in my banner, you will see um, some links to Twitter and my Facebook page. Actually, two Facebook pages. One is to my King Jabberwocky Books page, which is my main platform for my books. But the other one is a Facebook group that I made filled with amazing community members, very loving, very supportive, very awesome group of people. And what the King Jabberwocky Creative Group is just a place where the community can get together and see everything that I'm doing, from my books to my YouTube stuff. It all goes into one place. And it's just a really awesome community. It's an easy way to reach out to people and interact with people. I currently have some very, very fun community-based things going on, including a poll that you can vote on to decide whether or not I release a synopsis for my current upcoming book that I'm working on, as well as a giveaway for a free signed copy of my first book, Allen in Wonderland. And that's all in that group. So if you have any idea or any interest in the things that I'm doing, I would definitely recommend that you go check out at least the two Facebook pages. And if you want to be a part of a really awesome community, take part of those fun things, polls and giveaways and other fun things like that. Definitely check out the King Jabberwocky Creative Group on Facebook. And I guess that about does it. So until then, guys, as always, I salute you, and remember, we're all mad here.